In this video, I'd like to talk about finding the volume of cylinders. And remember that a cylinder, a shape like this, is composed of two circular bases on the top and the bottom, and it's essentially like a prism. It's not exactly a prism because prisms have polygons for their bases, but it's like a prism because you can imagine taking either the top base or the bottom base, and if you slide it along the length, it will fit perfectly through the shape and fit exactly into the opposite base. Or another way to see that is that if you cut out a cross section of the cylinder along that base, the area of this cross section will be the exact same area as either the top base, or the bottom base. And these cylinders have a similar formula to the volume of a rectangular prism. So let me sketch a quick picture of a rectangular prism, and we'll consider that before looking at the formula for the volume of a cylinder. So you can see I've drawn this rectangular prism, and let's say it has dimensions of height for this vertical distance, width for this distance here, and length for this distance going back. So these three dimensions compose this rectangular prism. And remember, the volume for this is the length multiplied by the width multiplied by the height. Now, another way to look at this is if I draw essentially the bottom base of this prism, you could think of this volume formula as finding the area of this base and then multiplying it by the height. Since the area of the base, this rectangular face on the bottom, is just the length times the width, right here, this is we can say the area of the base of our rectangular prism, and then we multiply that by the height of the prism. So that's one way to look at this, and that idea will actually apply to the cylinder. In fact, the formula for the volume of a cylinder is the area of the base multiplied by the height of the cylinder. And the area of the base can be found using the formula for the area of a circle, which you might remember as pi multiplied by the radius squared. So another way to write this, the volume of a cylinder is pi multiplied by the radius of the base, where, let me mark that down, r is the radius of the base, and we're going to multiply that by h, which is the height of the cylinder. And this formula can be used for any cylinder. And remember, cylinders show up in many different instances, but a simple instance is like a canned good or a can of soda. So to find its volume, we just need to mark what the height is and what the radius is. Now, since we have circular edges here, understanding where this formula comes from is a little bit difficult, and we will return to that in a later video. One way to understand it is using the properties of calculus. From using calculus, you can find this exact formula. But there are other ways to look at it which don't require calculus that we'll revisit later. For now, we just want to get used to actually using this formula. So let's mark what the height and the radius are. In this case, you can see the radius of this bottom circular base is 2, and the height of the cylinder is 5. So if we plug those in, we can find the volume. So the volume of this cylinder is pi, and remember that pi can be rounded as 3.14, but in reality it's an irrational number. So if we decide to use 3.14, then we're actually rounding the volume slightly. So if we want to leave it as an exact answer, we will just use the symbol pi in our answer. So our volume is pi multiplied by the radius squared, which is 2 squared, multiplied by the height, which is 5. And 2 squared is 4. So we have pi multiplied by 4 multiplied by 5, and 4 times 5 is 20, which means that the volume of this cylinder is equal to 20 multiplied by pi. And like I mentioned, if you want to get an approximate decimal answer, you can replace pi with 3.14. But again, this is rounding the answer. This will give you something that's not technically the exact volume of this. It will just be very close to the volume. So if you want the exact volume, you need to leave the symbol for pi.